the darkness. And when I first met Mike, he was ministering to me. And I remember many weeks walking into the service, my daughter here, who's now probably as tall as I am or taller, we were swinging her on the end of our arms going into the service. So I want to thank Mike for being a big part of my life and bringing me out of the darkness. Got a very special thing planned today for the service. Our very own Mike Fotheringham.
Happy Easter!
Happy Easter!
Good to be here with you. Several years ago in ministry school, I was asked what the purpose was for humankind. I thought about it long and hard, and I realized what I was searching for was happiness, fulfillment. So I want to talk to you today about that as it relates to Easter. To find happiness is to transcend our limitations. To find happiness is to know hope. It is being willing to forgive. It is also being attachment-free. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit more, about what that means. In fact, I'll talk to you right now. To be attachment-free is to be passionately alive in whatever you are doing, and in the same moment not caring what you have going is going to turn out. And it is to be in a constant state of forgiveness. Jesus talked about this idea of forgiveness being a constant state when he was asked, well, if my brother offends me, how much should I forgive him? And he said, well, 70 times 7. In other words, to be in a constant state of forgiveness. My mother's here today. Isn't that great?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Today's going to be 85. Keeps us all going. So it is to be in a constant state of forgiveness. Now, Jesus demonstrated this on the cross when he stated, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He knew that forgiveness was a key for him to transcend and to overcome his ultimate limitation. And we use the cross and the idea of Easter as a metaphor for our lives. Whether it was true or not, it's still a good story. And on Easter morning, we focus on what transcends our limitations. And it's important to know what forgiveness is. Now, forgiveness is more than just a good thing to do. It is scientific. And it brings about results that will transform your life when you do it. It means to give up to give up limitation for the good that you're searching for, or for happiness or fulfillment. So what do we need to give up? Well, I have 3 things down that I believe that if we were to give these up, then we'll be happy and feel fulfilled all of our lives. First one is struggle. Second one is security. And the third one is suffering. They all contract. And we live in an ever-expanding universe. So when we're willing to give them up, that we touch upon our real self. And we're not about to remake ourselves. But really, we're about being the best that we are meant to be. Robert Browning said this. He said, "My business is not to remake myself, but to make the absolute best about what God has made." In other words, there's nothing wrong with you. We're not here to change ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with us. We're here to release the imprisoned splendor that Emerson talked about. In other words, we are divine and holy just as we are. And if we look at our lives are all about continuing to expand, continuing to transform, continuing to find that fulfillment which we're searching for. And all we need to do is be willing to give up struggle, security, and suffering. So let's talk about struggle a little bit. There's a story of a frog, a great story about a frog, that was jumping along one day. And all of a sudden it jumped and landed in a huge pothole out in the middle of a dirt road. And he couldn't get out. Animals came by to help him. Farm animals came by and they just couldn't help him get out. So they decided to go and get some help. All of a sudden they turned around and the frog was there. And they asked him, "Well, how'd you get out?" He said, "Well, I couldn't get out, and then this tractor came along, and I had to get out." Struggles like that for us. We'll struggle along enough until we decide to change. Until we've had enough of the struggle, then we'll decide to get out and find the happiness that we desire. What about security? What is security? Is it money in the bank? Is it your job? Does the government owe us a living? Is the government going to take care of us? Is that security? Is Social Security security? Well, it is in some respects, but if we place our attention there, then sure enough, it will change. And we will be out on our own. Security is something that happens when we give into the status quo and the mediocrity of the lowest common denominator. Security is like this. I want to talk to you about the doldrums. The sailors have a term for something that happens out in the sea. They call it doldrums. And security is like this. The doldrums happen in seafaring ways near the equator. If a ship gets caught there, it can stay there for days, sometimes even weeks. Security is like this. It gets us stuck in a sense of status quo. But what we need to do is being willing to trust in the presence of the divine. Presence of the divine to be our security that we're searching for. You see, everything in the world changes, but God does not. So when we're willing to trust in that divine presence, then we find the happiness that we're searching for. We're attachment-free there. And we're not relying upon our job, money in the bank, for our happiness. For our sense of feeling secure in our life. And what about suffering? Suffering takes the form of feeling victimized until we actually let go of the idea. And the feeling of victimized, we don't fully live. There was a young man in high school who was 97 pounds. A weakling. He was bullied and trampled upon, and he was hurt severely. This 97-pound weakling went into depression for some time. He felt like the world was out to get him. And then one day he thought, I don't have to take this anymore. And he began to exercise. He began to eat right. He began to get stronger and stronger, and this became a passion for him. So he decided to go door to door and to tell people that they could do the same thing. They could feel healthier. Well, for some 70 years, the late Jack LaLanne was a model of health for all of us. An inspiration because he chose to not continue the suffering. He chose to live his life and expand with the fire of the life within him. To see the greater potential of who he was. He chose to grow in his spirituality. I remember watching him on TV, and he was always bright. Always had something going for him. So he chose to be an example for all of us, really. And lived his life fully the way that he wanted to live it. So when do we change? It's really when do we want to change. We can change anytime we want to. We don't have to live a minute longer, as J.C. Penney said. In life, we see ourselves because the Creator has endowed us with the ability to change. Now, we don't need to change who we are. We just need to change the perception about what we are. When we do that, then we can find the happiness that we're searching for. Now, this cross we brought here today has daffodils on it. And the daffodil represents the forgiving and transcending love of Christ. So each of you will receive one of these. Come up and get one. Okay, I want to read you the story of the resurrection. After the Sabbath, at the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Don't be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. And Jesus said to him, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, there they will see me. I want to talk to you a little bit about the idea of the cross and what it means symbolically. It means to cross out the negative, cross out the limitations. In the story of the cross, where Jesus was crucified, he made 7 statements. 7 means completion. And in one of the statements, as I mentioned before, he asked God to forgive the people, for they knew not what they do. This is this real spirit of forgiveness. It means to release harm, your intention of harm upon anyone. It's a very powerful statement to make. So when you forgive, it's always the person wouldn't know what they're doing, didn't know what they were doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. If they knew better, then they wouldn't do it. So it's in that spirit that creates the great release so that you can feel freer to be more happy and more fulfilled. And it's really a key, the key for the transcendence that Jesus had in the story. So in that spirit, are you ready to let go of your limitations?
Yes.
Okay. You ready to transcend them?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's just make a couple lines here. Come up and pick up a daffodil. And know that it represents, it's our gift to you today. It represents the forgiving love of Christ and you transcending all of your limitations. Okay? Great Easter. It's an honor to be with you.
Namaste.